Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell the truth about silver. Today is Wednesday, the 8th of January, 2020. And we were going to talk specifically about gold and silver today. However, there have been a few topics on the horizon and the world's agenda. And in view of the relative success of the last discussion we had with controversially Greg, we thought we would have another very brief news update. Of course, the two areas currently attracting most attention is the current situation with Qasem Soleimani, but also the fleeing of Ghosn from Japan to Lebanon. Now, to discuss all this, we have on the line, controversially, Greg. Greg, good evening.
Good evening.
Greg, we've noticed that today, both gold and silver prices have fallen back. In fact, silver more so percentage-wise than gold. So we currently have gold now at $15.54 and silver at $18.07. Down $15.28 respectively over the last 24 hours. Does this now mean that the West has no more to fear about repercussions concerning the killing of Qasem Soleimani?
I think that the West has a great deal to fear from it because the ball has been put very firmly into the court of Iran by Trump's injudicious, if showy, behavior. It may be very popular, but populism is never a good sign of diplomacy. Jaw, jaw, jaw is better than war, 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 or the risk of creating war. And although Trump will be seen as the local hero, if you look a little deeper, the people who have acted most sensibly in this situation, on many counts, are in fact Iran, which is more than a little embarrassing from the point of view of America and Britain as probably America's most loyal and supportive ally. Our two nations have been closely linked for literally centuries. It was unwise of Trump to take the action he did. I do not for a moment say that his action was not within the limits of law. Further, I don't say that they were not actions that needed taking, but it was the manner in which they were done that was supremely foolish, in my opinion. It is never wise to act as Obama did in Pakistan when he seized the leader of his main enemy and carried out a summary execution, dumping the body at sea. Nor was it wise of Trump to take the somewhat cowardly action of using a drone to blow up a series of cars in a convoy because he knew that Qasem Soleimani was in transit in Iraq. A wise man and a good leader would have protected his people rather better, and a better way to have done it would have been to use competent, highly trained military to act as a snatch group and take Soleimani together with such others of note in his convoy and put them before the international tribunals and courts that are readily available for such terrorists. It is not a wise action to make an arbitrary, impromptu decision without consulting Congress, done on the spur of the moment and with little thought of the consequences, and not even discussing it with your allies. It is a divisive action to go down that route. Very fortunately, Iran took the correct action and acted with a certain degree of common sense and wisdom. They have just put on the largest display that we know of in history of national unity, with the funeral and surrounding people involvement, larger indeed, it would appear, than even the display of 1989 at the funeral of Ayatollah Khomeini. Further, America's great puppet state stroke ally, Iraq, it will be noted that the person they put in power as president in Iraq attended the funeral in Tehran. Further, so did the preceding president, both of whom are supposedly allies of America. Iran then took the correct action in terms of retaliation, in that they dispatched some 22 rockets, displaying that they were capable of penetrating America's defensive systems, and made a point of ensuring that this was done at night, when there would be minimum personnel at the target zones, and they were able to land 22 believed to have been Katyusha rockets on strategic sites that involved the Americans, only one of which went astray and fell in another area. What happened to the much vaunted air defense that was penetrated? And how fortunate, since they can clearly penetrate air defense and Patriot defense, that they chose targets where they were pretty certain there would be no personnel killed. This could have been oh so different.
Greg, if I can stop you there, very eloquently put. But there will probably now be people seething at the comment you made that Iran has behaved more appropriately than the United States. And let me tell you why, or express a reason why they will be seething. Because arguably, there were two key reasons for the attack on Soleimani. The first, they claim, and we admit, proof of this has not come out as yet, but we've both had our contacts in the past with the intelligence services, and we know very often this proof isn't made immediately available for various security reasons, that Soleimani is on the verge of some form of plot or imminent attack, as he was recently meeting heads of other terrorist organizations. And secondly, let us not forget that Iran is not blameless in this, because they actually attacked the US embassy, and they were involving themselves through proxies in some cases in other parts of the Middle East, both on land and at sea, not forgetting some of the shipping, US ship oil supplies had been intervened by Iran or their proxies.
I don't deny any of that.
So how have they behaved more appropriately then?
I said more appropriately in their response.
Right.
I didn't say that their action would have been appropriate. I do not think that Iran's action at the moment anywhere on the planet in any manner, shape, or form is appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think the wisdom of not launching their 22 Katyusha rockets straight into high density American personnel has spared the world a war.
I would agree with that, but I'm now going to play devil's advocate. They know that the minute they did that, America will wipe Iran off the face of the earth. So surely it was self-preservation.
Do you think so?
Counter that comment then.
Do you think that America could wipe Islam off the face of the earth?
No, Iran.
Do you think that America could wipe Islam off the face of the earth?
Not Islam, no. Iran.
Had you noticed the attendance at the funeral of even America's closest Islamic allies? Had you noticed that the Iraqi parliament has called for the withdrawal of all Americans from Iraq? What he has managed to do with his action, as I said, was 100% the right action, namely taking out of circulation Qasem Soleimani. However, it was done in the wrong way.
You also said, Greg, that, now I may be paraphrasing rather than using the exact words, I'd have to listen to the tape again, but you certainly implied that this was a sort of off-the-cuff, last-minute decision. However, Lindsey Graham admits that he was briefed that they were going to take out Soleimani a few days before it actually occurred. So it's hardly off the cuff or shooting from the hip, isn't it?
I think it is purely a case of shooting from the hip when an action like this is not discussed with the elected government. The American people had no representation in this. There was no discussion with Congress or the Senate.
There is very little cooperation because of bipartisanship between, or partisanship, I should say, between the Senate and Congress, or between Republicans and Democrats.
I would utterly agree with you. Mm-hmm. Very little.
And that is,
they are all out for their own personal gain. One of the great faults of certain aspects of democracy.
So going back to my original sort of question right at the start, we've now seen gold and silver prices come back a bit. Gold is still marginally higher than its opening at the beginning of the week, though silver is actually lower than the opening at the beginning of the week. Do you think markets are feeling that perhaps Armageddon has been avoided, because the Dow Jones, as we speak, is up nearly 200 points?
Indubitably, the world is breathing a sigh of relief at the fact that Iran opted to take measured action.
Greg, this is a story that will run and run. Thank you for that. I'd like to move to the second part, which I know has attracted your attention. And this is the situation that Carlos Ghosn, the Nissan ex-boss, recently fleeing from Japan, as he was, I understand, under arrest for various crimes, and is now held up somewhere in Lebanon. Would you like to sort of give us the background to this and why you think this is an important story, either for the West, for America, or for the economy at large?
I think it's an important story because this was an important man. He was the head of Nissan's movement together with Renault, seeking to amalgamate the two companies under one banner. He had turned around the fortunes of Nissan in very great measure to the embarrassment of the board of Nissan. He had had some 20 books on the expertise with which he had handled business and that turnaround published about him. He had become, again, somewhat embarrassment, a popular gaijin hero. And gaijin is the Japanese for foreigner, outsider, or alien. And he had fallen foul of Japan's judicial system, which lacks any concept of justice that is understandable within any free society or any self-respecting democracy. We only have to look at the manner in which the Japanese historically, under the terms of Bushido, their honor code, have treated prisoners in the past. Don't forget that Carlos Ghosn had been under arrest from his position of immense success for Nissan in Japan, Nissan on the world market, a Japanese company. This would appear to have been resented by the board that put him in position with a 100% support of every member of the board. He fell foul of the fact that he had done too well by this company, and they had changed their tune because it was not apparently within their framework of Bushido to consider him the economic hero of the day in Japan. He was an outsider, and outsider has a very different meaning in Japan to probably anywhere else in the world. There are Koreans who have lived in Japan for 20 generations, yet cannot claim Japanese rights within Japan and have to keep reapplying for residency permits. This is a society that is so closed, it is near farcical. Bear in mind that Japan is also a country where, under the McCarthy constitution that was drawn up when they were forced to surrender at the end of the Second World War, surrender as a result of forcing the Allies to drop 2 atomic bombs in order to save lives. Otherwise, they would have fought to the last man in every paddy field in Japan, killing millions. Having been forced by the new constitution to de-deify their emperor, who was considered to be a god descended from the sun, which is rather a quaint idea, isn't it? We then find that in the new constitution, the entire structure of the shogunate, from emperor through daimyos to the samurai families, were forced to disband because the peasantry of Japan were effectively slaves to the samurai family that ruled their area under the daimyo, who were the emperor's emissaries to the various separate regions of Japan. As a result of this being dismantled, most of the samurai families reformed themselves. You probably cannot name any of the samurai families that were forced out of their position as daimyos and samurai leaders, the warlords of the day. However, it would appear that they reformed as corporations, and you actually know quite a number of them. Akai, Sansui, Sony, Toshiba, Nissan, Mitsubishi, to name just a few of them. Merely family corporations. Hence, To this day, Japan has a cradle to the grave, a dedication to an employer. It is very difficult for employees of any stature in Japan to change company. That is moving to another samurai. This means that the legal structure is geared to that concept of Bushido, where you have a 99.5% probability of being found guilty in a Japanese court. I would agree with Carlos Ghosn that he did not flee justice in Japan. He fled from injustice in Japan. And I wish him good fortune.
Greg, we've promised to keep this news update relatively short. Yesterday, we published a video entitled Professor Claims Equities May Rise Again in 2020. And the day before, your view again on the news. Now, just very briefly then, the basis of yesterday's video, and I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed in that it hasn't gained as many views as we normally have, particularly bearing in mind that all the pumpers are claiming that 2020 is going to be the year that not only are we going to see gold and silver prices reach all-time highs, but that equities are going to collapse along with the United States dollar. And this professor has basically said that and it's a professor actually of finance at the, believe it or not, Wharton School of Business, the same school, allegedly, that Donald Trump attended. And he is basically arguing, this is the chap who actually called for a 20,000 Dow back in 2015, when everyone else was predicting that that would be an impossibility. So he has some credential. And he is saying that this year, equities will rise, not as much as they did last year, because we've had Dow Jones, NASDAQ, and S&P 500 rising between 20 and 30, well, 37%. But he does see a rise of up to around 10% this year, suggesting, therefore, that the Armageddon economics that everyone is fearing is not likely to occur. I know you're not an equity or stocks or share man, but what say you from a geopolitical point of view? Do you think the world is in so much turmoil that the equity markets are definitely going to fail?
I would issue a note of caution against the pumpers, in that as they are pumping gold and silver, I would like to quote one of the best known prostitutes in Britain's history, who said, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? Mandy Rice Davis, who was one of the prostitutes, including Christine Keeler, in the Jack Profumo affair. Some of you may know of it. And those pumpers very much would say that, wouldn't they? They have been promising squillion% rises in gold and silver ever since I was aware of the value of those two commodities. Firstly, silver has never gone anywhere in terms of rise in price without fraud, namely the Bunker Hunt fraud, where he owned more silver, allegedly, than had ever been produced in the whole of history anywhere in the world, which takes some pumping. Gold will make you money if invested in with judgment, intelligence, and definitely not listening to pumpers. That would be the worst place to start. Gold is a good hedge against inflation, and if traded with a great deal of expertise and in fairly large quantities, will make you money if you get it right. It will also lose you a lot of money if you get it wrong. So one can only see it as an informed gamble in the hands of experts. As to equities, stocks, shares, bonds, and the like, bear in mind that they are fronted by brokers who, in the main, are little more than professional gamblers in pinstripe suits using other people's money and credit. So act with caution, as it says at the bottom of so many investment ads. Stocks and shares, etc., can go down just as much as they can go up.
Greg, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We hope you have found this video interesting and informative, and if so, please give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Please ensure that you have subscribed to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of any future videos. Also, kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe either as a free or paying member for regular email updates and offers. Disclaimer: Illuminati Silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.